All right, folks, showtime.
Geographical features, landforms.
From space, the Earth looks as smooth as a marble.
But the Earth is really a large sphere with an outer crust made of rock.
Look closer, and you see the natural shapes and features of the Earth's surface.
These are called landforms, and they are constantly changing.
Landforms affect how and where we live. They can make our lives easier or more difficult.
The 7 continents are Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, South America, Australia, and Antarctica.
Some of the continents have unique features, like a continental divide. Sometimes called a Great Divide, this is an imaginary line that separates western flowing rivers from eastern flowing rivers.
In North America, the continental divide runs along the top of the Rocky Mountains.
Continents near the poles have visible continental glaciers. A continental glacier is a large, thick sheet of ice that covers all of the land except for the highest mountain peaks.
Almost every continent has plains, plateaus, hills, and mountains. Mountains and other landforms are measured by their elevation, their height above sea level.
Mountains are the highest landform. They rise at least 969 feet above the land around them. Mountains usually have pointed tops, called summits or peaks, and steep sides, called slopes.
Many mountains are so high we can see a clear timberline. A timberline is the point of elevation where it is too cold for trees to grow.
For many areas, mountains have served as a barrier, making it more difficult for transportation, settlement, and communication between people.
In the Swiss Alps, people speak hundreds of dialects. In the past, jagged mountain ridges and steep gorges made it very difficult for people from different communities to meet and talk to each other. So each community developed their own way of speaking the language.
Today, millions of people go to the mountains for recreation. People like to camp, hike, ski, or climb in mountains. And many go to breathe the fresh air and view the scenery.
The many types of mountains all over the world form in different ways. Fault block mountains form when huge blocks of the Earth's crust tilt or push along a natural crack in the Earth's surface called a fault.
The Cordilleran mountain region from Mexico to Oregon is made up of fault block mountains. The Teton Range in Wyoming, the Wasatch Range in Utah, and the Harz Mountains in Germany were all formed by faults.
Folded chain mountains form when plates of rocks beneath the Earth's surface fold up, like a wrinkled rug.
The Swiss Alps are folded chain mountains. The Appalachian Mountains in the United States are also folded chain mountains.
Dome mountains form when magma from the Earth's center pushes up but does not reach the surface. When the magma hardens underneath, a mountain forms.
The Black Hills of South Dakota are dome mountains.
Erupting volcanoes cause single mountains. Molten rock from deep within the earth erupts and piles up on the surface.
Mount Fujiyama in Japan, Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, and Mount St. Helens in Washington State are all volcanic mountains.
You'll usually see mountains in groups, called ranges. The Sierra Nevada mountain range in California and the Cascade Mountain Range in Oregon and Washington are two examples.
Mountain systems contain several mountain ranges in one area, like the Appalachian Mountain System. This system includes the Great Smoky, the Blue Ridge, the Adirondack, and the Green Mountain Ranges.
Mountain belts are even larger groups of mountains that contain mountain ranges and systems.
Most of the Earth's mountains are located within two mountain belts: the Eurasian-Melanesian Belt, which runs through Europe, Asia, and Malaysia, and the Circum-Pacific Belt under the ocean.
Between some mountains lie valleys. Valleys are low, long, flat areas bordered on both sides by higher land, hills, or mountains.
The bottom of a valley is called the floor. Valley floors often have fertile soil that makes them good for growing crops. Rivers or streams also run along the floors of most valleys.
Like mountains, valleys form in different ways. When a long, narrow section of the Earth's crust sinks, a rift is formed. The floor of a rift valley is always flat.
Some valleys are created by valley glaciers. A valley glacier is a long, narrow body of ice that fills a high mountain valley. As the glacier moves down, it forms a U-shaped valley with steep walls near the mountain peaks.
Yosemite Valley is a glaciated valley. It started as a valley carved by a river, but then valley glaciers moved through the high mountains and carved out a U-shaped valley.
Most valleys are formed by erosion caused by streams or rivers.
If a valley formed by a river is very narrow and deep with steep sides, it is called a canyon.
Millions of years ago, the Grand Canyon was nothing more than a creek or small riverbed. Over the years, water carved away layer after layer of small pieces of rock, until it became the deep canyon that it is today.
Canyons are also called gorges, ravines, or chasms.
This looks like a valley, but it is called a basin. A basin is a low, bowl-shaped area. The water in a basin is drained by a river. A basin is at least partly surrounded by higher land.
The Mississippi River Basin drains most of the United States.
And the Great Basin includes the largest desert area in the United States. A desert is a dry, barren area of land that receives less than 10 inches of rainfall each year.
Little variety of vegetation can grow here, and the people who live in deserts have to find ways to get the water they need.
Death Valley is part of this large desert. The floor of Death Valley is the lowest elevation in the Western Hemisphere, at 282 feet below sea level.
Hills are higher than valleys, but lower than mountains. They are not as rugged as mountains, and they have rounded tops instead of peaks. Foothills are higher hills and are found at the base or foot of mountains.
A butte is a steep-sided hill or mountain that stands alone and rises sharply out of the land around it. The Sutter Buttes, with their steep sides and flattened tops, jut up out of the valley floor in California.
Around the world, you'll find plateaus.
Plateaus are fairly large, flat areas of land that are higher than the land surrounding them. They range in elevation from almost 2,000 feet to almost 5,000 feet above sea level.
Plateaus in humid climates like Spain and France provide good grazing land for livestock.
The Appalachian Plateaus in the United States contain coal, a valuable natural resource.
Plateaus are made up of horizontal levels of rock.
Sometimes plateaus form when the inner part of the earth becomes hotter and lifts the earth's crust. The rock on the edges breaks. Slowly, the plateau is forced up.
Other times, sheets of lava harden, one on top of the other, and a plateau is formed. And some plateaus are produced by water erosion.
A mesa is part of a plateau that has been worn away by erosion. They are found near larger plateaus. Mesas are named for the Spanish word for table. Can you see why?
A mesa looks like a butte, but mesas are much larger. Another name for mesa is outlier.
The sides of a plateau are cliffs or escarpments, very high, steep faces of rock. If the plateau is near the ocean, the cliff goes straight down to the seashore.
Some cliffs are not part of a plateau but form because water or glacier pushes material from the sides of a hill or mountain, creating a flat, steep side.
Plains are broad, usually flat areas of land. Interior plains are found on the inside or the interior of continents, away from the ocean.
Plains usually have very good soil for growing crops, which is why we find so many farms there. Drier plains, like the Great Plains in the United States, are covered with grassland.
Prairies are similar to plains. They can be flat or hilly and are covered with tall grasses. Prairies usually have hot summers, cold winters, and moderate rainfall. The climate on prairies make them good homes for many plants and animals.
Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba are considered the prairie provinces in Canada. The Pampa is a large prairie in Argentina. In parts of Hungary, Romania, Russia, and the Ukraine are covered with prairie land.
A swamp, or marsh, is an area of lowland saturated with water. A swamp can support trees and bushes. Many swamps are found in the southeastern United States, like the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia and Florida, and the famous Everglades in Florida.
A marsh can only support soft vegetation, like cattails, but are home to many rare plants and animals. Many marshes have been filled in to build homes and other buildings. But conservation groups are letting people know the importance of these areas.
A peninsula is land almost surrounded by water, but connected to the mainland. Some peninsulas, like Florida, are attached to the mainland by a large base. Others are attached by a narrow strip of land called an isthmus. The peninsula of Malay is connected to Thailand by the Isthmus of Kra.
Cape is a point of land that extends prominently into a lake, sea, or ocean. Waters surrounding a cape are usually rough, making navigation difficult.
Cape Horn is at the southern tip of South America. Before the Panama Canal was built, ships had to travel around the entire continent of South America and the choppy waters off Cape Horn to reach California from the East Coast.
A shoreline or a coast is where the land meets water. Some shorelines and coasts are sandy beaches. Others are rocky cliffs. Many people go to the coast to lie on the sand, have a picnic, or just enjoy the ocean water. Wind and water are always changing coast and shorelines by carrying sand to and away from the coast.
An island is a body of land smaller than a continent that is completely surrounded by water. Islands can be found in oceans, rivers, or lakes. Some islands, like Greenland, are very large. Very small islands are often called islets. Some islands are part of other countries. The Galapagos Islands are part of Ecuador. Other islands, like New Zealand, are separate countries.
An archipelago is a string or group of many islands. The islands of Malay are an archipelago. A barrier island is a thin island near a coast. They have wide, sandy beaches. They form when sand, silt, or gravel in moving water or wind are dropped near the shore.
Islands have, for a long time, served as stopping points for ships crossing oceans. Ships stop at islands to refuel or pick up supplies. Because of this, islands have been very important in spreading people, animals, and plants from one continent to another.
Coral reefs are found only in tropical waters. They are made from the hard limestone shells of animals that have lived in the reefs.
There are different kinds of reefs.
Fringing reefs extend from the shore into the sea or ocean. Barrier reefs follow the shoreline, but are separated from the land by water. The largest is off Australia, the Great Barrier Reef.
Atolls are formed when coral grows around a worn-down volcanic island. A thin layer of vegetation attaches to the coral, grows, and other vegetation begins to grow there, and it becomes a coral island, like Bikini Atoll. Most atolls are found in the Pacific Ocean.
Land plays an important role in how we live our lives. Mountains can make travel and communication difficult, and islands can help spread civilization to new places.
We know that land exists in many different forms. It is important to understand how the land around us affects our lives and how it is always changing, so that we can make good use of these geographical features.